Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Well, I apologize in advance for my voice today. It might sound a little different as I have a sore throat and a little bit of cold as well. But, anyways, with the ongoing debate around 70 hours a week at work, a statement made by Mr. Narayan Murthy, former chairperson and founder of Infosys Limited, there has been a lot of talk going on around future of work, how many hours, productivity, etc., right? So recently I came across this really interesting article which is mentioned in the 10 must reads by Harvard Business Review publications in their 2023 edition. And the title of the article is The Future of Flexibility at Work. So today we are going to discuss on this, and so let's get started. Now, first of all, why flexibility is important? Well, this can be broadly divided into 4 parts or 4 points. The first is for a better personal and professional life balance. The second, for home, children, and elderly care to be given equal priority. Third, choice of working at personal's most productive hours and not limiting to 9 to 5. Some people are more productive at late night hours and some during sunrise hours, right? And the fourth point is that focusing on amount of responsibility taken by an individual rather than number of hours spent in a room or office. So broadly, there are 2 approaches of flexibility that has been adopted by most of the organizations across the globe. The first approach is that it acts as an ad hoc work-life accommodation available on request. That is, our maternity leaves, sick leaves, or certain kind of healthcare benefits that we get in our offices, not just for us, but for our family as well. And the second approach is that giving people permission to get their work done on their own schedule as long as they are available to answer emails or put out fires 24/7. Now, neither approaches are sustainable in reality, isn't it? So let's brainstorm more. Now, just to give you an overall synopsis of this article, the authors in this article broadly suggests that organizations must develop their own flexibility programs and policies. Make flexibility available to all employees. Prioritize clear structures and policies. Empower employees to create and manage their own flexibility. Remove disincentives for use. Remember that you need support from the top. Experiment and measure outcomes, including equity. Consider the impact of flexibility on your global workforce as well. And remember that implementing flexibility involves a learning curve. Now let's get into details with each of this point that author suggests that what can be done under each of these points. Now, talking about traditional approaches, as I just mentioned in the previous slides, that leaders have typically managed flexibility in one of the 2 ways, which is first as an accommodation around individual work-life events such as illness or childcare, which companies use to attract and retain employees. And second, or is boundaryless working, which many leaders used to transition their organizations to widespread remote work during COVID-19 especially. Now, in the second case, which is the boundaryless working, employees are expected to be available 24/7 to perform their jobs. While accommodation largely offers flexibility for the individual, whereas boundaryless working offers flexibility for the company. Neither is inherently bad, right? But both can have unintended consequences, particularly when used in isolation. Now let's talk about the first approach out of the 2, which is the accommodation. Well, we know that women, especially working mothers and caregivers, have historically been the primary seekers of accommodation and have faced pay and career discrimination as a result. Work-life flexibility has long been gender siloed, seen as a women's issue, with women bearing the brunt of its effect on career and pay across occupations. During pandemic, for example, the publishing output and productivity of talented STEM professional women decreased dramatically while women handled most of the childcare, elder care and schooling. If work flexibility is viewed as an exceptional accommodation, it can also affect customers and clients. In one large North American study, a manager who had supported implementing flexible work commented, "Some clients are more or less empathetic than others. I'm not paying the company to help your people have a nice workload. I need our work done." Now, in organizations where managers are the gatekeepers of flexibility, in most often case, employee access can be very uneven, with accommodation dependent on who one's boss is rather than on the quality of one's work or the equitable support of non-work needs. Now, the second approach, which is the boundaryless working, that means employees working anywhere, anytime. Companies initiate this to enhance productivity and enhance their businesses to operate efficiently around the clock while saving money. Leaders learn on how to manage performance by relying more on outcome metrics than on face time. There is also visible increase in productivity among employees due to absence of commutes and water cooler chit-chats. Also, cost savings from reducing office space are a plus for employers. Despite of several benefits, boundaryless flexibility increasingly passes the buck by shifting the burden of matching customer schedule demands onto workers, depleting their personal time, and especially for remote working professionals, transferring workspace and tech support costs as well. Employees are at greater risk for layoffs, lower ratings, and lower pay because they are less socially connected to colleagues. The work without boundaries approach also increase isolation, symptoms of depression, overwork, and job creep into non-work space and time. What happens at home matters to the success of boundaryless working. Well, reports suggest that working from home or boundaryless working have hidden gender effects. Recent reviews suggest that an employee, often a woman, who is remotely working is more likely to take on even more family demands and report greater work-life conflict. Even for a dual career couples, traditional gender roles persisted at home, aggravated by pandemic disruptions. A national study of women scientists found that although their mostly male partners also worked remotely during the pandemic, the women ended up doing 90% of the domestic labor. Fathers were unable to or unwilling to help. So working women managed virtual schooling, childcare, pets, cooking and cleaning, basically all the household chores, and experienced higher work-family conflict as well as overload at work. This exacerbated the gender gap, which the World Economic Forum notes has increased by more than an entire generation's worth. It will now take 135.6 years for women, which is 135.6 years for women to reach parity with men, rather than 99.5, which was the previous statistics. At the other extreme, flexibility will be implemented without structures or norms, resulting in a program that is disorganized, scattershot, and reactive to work requirements. Expectations about where and when one should work may shift without warning. As work seeps into off hours and employees struggle to live predictable non-work lives. Well, true flexibility will require truly new thinking. Now, what can be a better way? So, true flexibility aligns employers and employees to achieve mutual gain in meeting both performance and work-life needs. It means to compete in the market over the long term, and it gives employees a say and same choice in how flexibility is implemented on their teams and in their organizations. This is both a top-down and bottom-up process. The company provides the scaffolding, flexibility options, equipment, and supportive performance management systems, and individual employees and teams decide how to organize their work with it. With this approach, employers benefit by retaining a globally diverse, sustainable workforce. Employees experience well being, enjoy respectful team processes, and avoid burnout and health problems. But this requires moving away from old narratives and enhancing employee support and trust. To do this, the leaders must assess their current culture, reflecting and asking questions like how do they define flexibility? Has the company leaned more towards accommodation or boundarylessness or a combination? What policies has it embraced for which jobs, etc., etc.? Making flexibility available to all employees. Well, companies often ignore the flexibility needs of essential and hourly workers, providing flexibility only to knowledge workers on technology driven teams. Every job deserves some flexibility. Organization should offer flexibility to both office and frontline workers, isn't it? It cannot be viewed as a scarce or privileged resource. Considering a pharmaceutical company that was part of the studies for this article, during a snowstorm, senior directors and managers could work from home, but secretaries were forced to drive on a busy and icy freeway to get to the office. Many leaders didn't realize that they had such an unfair policy because they were so accustomed to administrative support in a hierarchical culture. The company gradually expanded its flexibility by experimenting with summer hours. A secretary could partner with a peer to cover each other's Friday workload, enabling them to take every other Friday off. Well, flexibility for all workers is indeed possible. As managers learned during the pandemic, a company can schedule hourly work flexibly and in shorter shifts and give paid time off at the last minute without penalty. In fact, those accommodations were necessary to support essential workers during the crisis at the time of COVID 19. Increasing flexibility for frontline workers can help a company better support diversity and inclusion. Ultimately, all employees need to be supported in their personal lives. Because if your flexibility policies exclude a segment of your workforce, you are doing something wrong. When talking about flexibility at work, prioritizing clear structures and policies is pivotal for any company. Flexibility policies will not work if they are difficult to understand, if employees or managers don't know how to use them, or if they vary greatly in approach. Organizations benefit when they develop clear written frameworks with principles that can guide decision making about and expectations for flexibility. Now, this can be started as a basic checklist that can serve as a starting point for companies' flexible work arrangements. That may include several points like to develop a written policy that clearly lays out expectations, communicating with all employees about the possibilities for flexible work and aim to achieve equality, asking employees to document their planned versus actual work hours to foster work routines and increase transparency about when they are working and when they are off. By using clear metrics to evaluate employees on the quality of their work, not the timing or quantity of it. Some questions that leaders, team members, and other stakeholders might discuss must include things like how has the company decided to manage location based pay equity? For example, will all fully remote workers who perform the same jobs, regardless of whether they live in Mumbai or Shimla in case of India, because they are, Mumbai is a metro city, and Shimla and Mumbai are from two different states with two different geographies, population, culture, people, even purchasing parity as well. Should they receive the same base or merit pay? So these kind of questions can be brainstormed within the team, managers, stakeholders, etc. Also, what are the fair criteria for how the team sets core hours, say from 10 to 3, when members will be available for collaboration, meetings, and communication. Basically, setting a mutual time when the majority of meetings can be done irrespective of where the employee is working from, which place, right? And what is an equitable way to set limits on employees availability, and what are the norms for respecting the time off? So these kind of questions can be brainstormed while setting the clear structures and policies in terms of flexibility at work. Although clear policies and consistent implementation are important, overly restrictive policies are not the answer. Processes should be adaptable. Well, transparency being the baseline of flexible working, boundaryless working, it is very important that every employee who is working remotely, especially, has that sense of ownership towards their tasks, accountability towards their responsibilities, right? So, for that, it is very important to empower employees to create and manage their own flexibility. Although leaders must help shape the structures and policies for flexible work, they don't need to have all the answers. Instead, they should facilitate conversations with workers to unpack all the ways in which people interpret flexibility, from where one works to the construction of one's work schedule. It may be helpful for managers to give employees a list of considerations to reflect on and address. The leaders should actually encourage employees to self-reflect and to create their own structures. And for self-reflection, they must encourage employees to ask themselves questions like that revolves around: how might my clients experience be affected by my flexibility? In what ways can any negative impact be mitigated? How might my interactions with team members be affected? What actions can I take to ensure strong collaboration and work relationships? Do I have or can I develop the skills I need for the proposed flexible work arrangement? For example, do I have the self-discipline to manage attention and boundaries for remote working, or to maintain the energy and focus for a compressed work week? Have I talked with my manager and clients to ensure that my part-time job is designed and scoped realistically so that I can perform it effectively with my reduced hours? Do I have the right work and home resources like tech support, an internet connection, space, family support, a backup work location, etc., to ensure that I can accomplish my job? So these are the questions that a leader must ask employees to self-reflect, to make their own structures around flexibility. Also, sometimes managers also provide checklists to employees who are using specific types of flexibility. The next step is to create organization-wide structures for self-scheduling and shift swapping to empower employees. Many industries, in fact, are setting up employee self-management processes that give workers greater control over their schedules and hours without penalty. Healthcare organizations, especially with their large female workforce, have been early adopters of self-scheduling. In one study of self-scheduling, among nurses in 5 comparable medical and surgical units, a key component was educating them about self-scheduling and negotiation skills, and when to adjust guidelines to meet needs such as determining holiday coverage. Employee satisfaction and retention increased as a result in this area. Another example comes from a company, Delta, a large non-unionized US airline that employs a bidding process whereby employees pick their own shifts using a software program with choice increasing to seniority. Workers may swap or give away shifts as long as overtime doesn't increase and health and safety rules are not violated. In both these examples, the role of leaders is to establish guidelines regarding what works and what doesn't in a way that is facilitating but not controlling, ensuring that workers understand their accountability for guaranteeing staffing, mandates, and in the case of healthcare, the quality of patients' care. Well, one of the criteria that must be considered while designing the policy around flexibility at work is removing disincentives for use. Policies that enable employees to take vacation when desired or sick leave when needed, even when that time off is unlimited on paper, are often accompanied by disincentives for using them. Consider the unlimited vacation time that no one actually takes advantage of. A common barrier is chronic understaffing. In a study conducted on frontline workers, it showed that only 1 in 4 employees at a continuously running oil production company could use available vacation time because of it. As a result, employees suffered burnout. One manager reported being unable to get time off to attend a niece's wedding, even though he was supposed to walk her down the aisle in place of her late father. We also see structural disincentives in healthcare where nurses are increasingly unable to use paid vacation and sick time earned. And we have encountered leave incentive programs in which employees can actually make more money by not taking time off. Like, this is such a sad reality, even from our school times. Even though we are allowed to take sick leaves, but in the name of punctuality, those who have 100% attendance in the year are appreciated and given some rewards around it, while making the other students feel that being sick or taking time off for self or for family is a punishment, is a bad thing to do, which is a sad reality that we have been taught since school time as well. But it should not be the case for our betterment of our mental health, right? Now, in one case, a department chair celebrated a male professor for attending a faculty meeting during parental leave, whereas a female colleague who had just given birth missed the meeting to nurse the meeting and recover. The message to employees was clear: you are rewarded for showing up even when the official policy says you are not supposed to. And it is such a sad reality. Even during maternity leaves, there are so many times that instead of utilizing maternity leaves, some female employees actually attend the office where they are being rewarded, appreciated, applauded, while making the other women who are on maternity leave feel that they are doing something wrong, or they are not being the most productive for their organization. Whereas in reality, every women's body type, health varies during their pregnancy. No two women are same. And while one woman's health might be deteriorated while during her pregnancy, the other female might be feeling absolutely fine. And it is not the other person's fault that she is not in her best state of health. So while appreciating one woman who is actually able to attend the office and another woman who is not, is really unfair, right? So that should not be the case, which is happening today, sadly, in so many organizations and industries as well. Well, also leaders must improve these types of disincentives. One tactic is to publicly recognize top talent who work flexibly and achieve high performance. There are companies that use flexibility as an incentive to reduce excessive overtime and burnout and increase productivity and cost savings. A pharmaceutical company offered employees a work week of 4 10-hour days with job security in return for no overtime payment agreement. The company saved money and saw improved performance as the team because self-managing and supervisors transitioned out of boss roles and became team members themselves. Remember that leadership matters. True flexibility that meets business and personal needs is unlikely to succeed without support from the top. Top leaders should recognize and reward supervisors who encourage their teams to get their work done without burning out. It's up to the leaders to focus on the work and not the where of it. Leaders must be careful how they communicate about various forms of flexibility. For example, when remote working is framed as an initiative to improve work family balance, it often becomes a gendered phenomena, leading men to assume they can't take advantage of it. So, as I discussed previously, in terms of disincentives about maternity leave and those kind of unfairness, there is also misperceived and preconceived perceptions that work life balance is only for women and not for men. So, hence, it's important to communicate effectively for all kinds of workers in all kinds of jobs and at all levels. Leaders must also explain the organization's commitment to flexibility to outside stakeholders. For example, if a company is practicing flexibility but its clients still expect 24/7 responses, the company's policy simply won't work. One way to address this issue is to make client expectations into flexible work plans. For example, by staffing key accounts with several employees who can tag team and then presenting that as benefit to clients. One must also experiment and measure outcomes, including equity. Well, true flexibility is an ongoing process requiring that management be open to experimentation and new ideas. Some arrangements may not work at first and will need to be adjusted. That is normal and an important part of the process. Evaluation does not equate to failure, right? So, for example, Microsoft found that when a large team initially moved to remote work in 2020, employees worked an average of 4 more hours a week, sent more messages at non-standard hours, and spent more times in meetings, risking to burning out. Leaders soon realized that this pace was unsustainable for themselves and for employees as well, and encouraged teams to develop guidelines to ensure both work and non work time, which is like clear cut shifts, daily breaks, and dedicated solo work hours, for example. Evidence suggests that gathering data and making changes can pay off. While designing the policy, the impact of flexibility on your global workforce must also be taken into consideration. To ensure fair access and results as your company experiments, start by taking race and gender into consideration while conducting an audit to see whether heavier users of work life flexibility have pay equity or not. There's evidence that inequity can and does occur. In 2019, the bonuses of senior female employees at the Swiss bank UBS were not restored to previous levels when the women returned from maternity leave. Some of them eventually resigned. Another example is from Nike, which cut pay for star athletes who went on maternity leave. After a backlash, the company adjusted that policy to avoid penalizing mothers. We must also caution against establishing a policy that offers employees the option of remote work only if they can take a pay cut, or creating a pay structure that's based on location. Talent is talent, and compensation shouldn't depend on where employees are unless their location is vital for the people they are serving, like, for example, government civil servants, or required by licensing rules by law, etc. etc. In an interview at an oil company headquartered in EU, it was found EU basically is European Union. It was found that employees in one of its Asian offices preferred a 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. workday shift. This allowed many workers to pick up their children and manage their work life balance in a better way. It also facilitated communication across time zones and increased employee productivity and engagement. No one had to get up in the middle of the night for a conference call, since 3 p.m. in the Asia office was 9 a.m. At the company's headquarters. Such localized flexibility practices can help maintain equity among employees in different parts of the world so that the team members work at mutually convenient times. Finally, remember that implementing flexibility involves a learning curve. The leader's role is to make performance expectations clear and resources to support flexibility and performance consistent across people and teams. If someone is falling short, put that person on a performance improvement plan and assess whether skills, motivation, or some other issue is getting in the way. Don't assume that flexibility is the main reason that work isn't getting done. The pandemic has led many employees to rethink the importance of work in their lives and to change their relationship to it. Many are demanding more flexibility. In response, leaders need to stop viewing flexibility as an HR policy and regard it as an opportunity to organizational transformation that will benefit both the employees and their businesses. So that's it for today's video. I hope you found this article informative to create your own structures and policies around flexibility at work in your organizations. But as I said earlier, do remember that these policies are subjective depending on the type of industry that you are working in. These policies cannot be universal, and what works for a manufacturing firm cannot work for an IT firm or other industry, right? And vice versa. So, create your own subjective structures and policies depending on the type of industry that you are working in. And I hope you enjoyed this video. So stay tuned for many more such interesting articles, stories, and case studies related to management. See you next week. Have a nice day.